So yes, let's get cracking because we only have half an hour. We don't want to take a lot of your time, but hopefully this is going to be as interesting as possible. So this is a revamp of our previous events that we used to run in person in Bristol, the Smart Cookies. The Smart Cookies idea was to bring into, I'm trying, you see, I knew we had to do a test run. The Smart Cookies idea was to bring into the same room designers, developers, marketeers, business people, and to all learn from one of the same subjects. The reality is that in the real world, all those people are fighting for their own corners. And what we want is inclusivity in our businesses. So we were trying to create a group that would allow all of us to exchange and learn from each other. We had some relative success when we're doing them in person. So we used to run them in a building called the Engine Shed for those who are Bristol based. We were kind of like at the point of outgrowing the Engine Shed when COVID hit. And for about a year, we were struggling about like what should be the format for those if we were going to go digital, because we were typically a normal event would have a couple of people, a couple of panelists, and there was a lot of discussions. So we decided this year to try to revamp them as bite-sized talk, and hopefully by having only one speaker and then Q&A at the end, we can still get some of that interaction. So feel free to ask any questions while the talk is going, and Emily will pick up the questions in the last 10 minutes. This is also my very first. This is also the very first digital one that we do. So I decided to take the hit onto any kind of digital problems, and therefore I'm going to give that first talk. But we have more speakers coming up for the next ones, and we're going to talk about that at the end. So today we're going to talk about the 7 costly mistakes to avoid when someone else is building you up. Let me give you a bit of background about me and why I think I can have some authority about talking about these subjects. So some background. I'm Nic. I co-founded a development agency called Cookies HQ 10 years ago with my wife. I have 3 kids and I have about 50 different bosses. That means that at any point there are clients asking for like advice or things to do, and usually those things comes to us, and then I'll drill down to the project managers, and then I'll scatter around the team. So we're now a team of 15 people, and we continue to grow. If you're looking for a development job, a QA job, or a PM role, please contact me at the end. You can find me on Twitter at Nic Alpi now. I've changed the handle, and I should have changed that presentation. And also you can find Cookies HQ at the Cookies HQ. Just a very brief, why people are still coming, just a very brief overview of what Cookie does. We work primarily with startups and scale-ups. So our recent clients include the likes of BBC Maestro, for whom we've developed like a complete bespoke VOD platform. We've got Yup, like the Bristol marketplace, experience marketplace. We also work with like larger entities like Rough Trade, where for them we've helped with their technical SEOs, we've helped with their internal search and recommendation engine, which is like extremely complex, as you can imagine in the music industry. We've worked with people like Pattern Bank, growing them from a couple of thousand designs sold on site with now more than 80,000 designs sold at any point on site. So these are the kind of work that we do, but primarily that can all be resumed by we build product for other people. We are not building product for ourselves. We have a couple of pet projects where we can experience things, but primarily our business is to build and scale product for other people. And I think this is the important part in that talk is what do I mean by when someone else is building you up? So if you are a startup founder, you typically have 2 options. Either you have the ability to build your product yourself, and therefore you're only using your time. If not, you're probably going to talk to someone like Cookies or a freelance or another agency, and then you're going to ask somebody else to build you up in exchange of money or money and equity. I believe that all those mistakes can be done by both parties, whether you are doing your app yourself or whether you're asking somebody else to build your app. The reality is when you ask somebody else to do your app, those mistakes will actually cost you a lot of money, where if you are building your app yourself, that will cost you time and not that much money. So this is very important to understand the differentiation. Again, we have worked with startup founders for about 10 years now, and we've seen patterns emerging. And I'm certainly not saying that in the early days, we're not immune to not recognizing those patterns. But today, we become pretty good at recognizing them and smelling when something is not done right. And then we help those founders to actually get the foundations correct. For me, mistake number one is to not have done any serious market research. So if somebody comes to us with, I have this idea and I think it's great, and I spoke to my mate at a pub and they were very excited about it, this is not market research. So going into the nitty-gritty of who is your market, who is going to buy for your product, how much are they willing to pay, what is the problem you're trying to solve, why are they going to pay for you to solve that problem, how much are they willing to pay for that, is the essential part of your market research. You need to have done some level of it. Obviously, market research can be as long as you want it, but you need to have done some level of market research that would show us when you come to say, okay, look, we are looking to target these people, and no, the 18 to 16-year-old is not a market. You're going to have to offer different problem solving for each different niche. But we are looking to target these people. We have talked to these segments, and this is the problem that we are going to solve for these particular segments. And we believe that they're ready to pay this amount of money. If you have never done market research before, that can be extremely daunting. And over the years, the one book I keep people referring to as to have your first read, it's a very easy read. It's called the Mum Test. I may actually have one here. So you can find the Mum Test on Amazon. It's a very short book, but what this book is going to teach you is to talk about your product to someone without talking about your idea, without talking about your solution, but to actually hear them and listen to them talking about their problem and how they're solving the problem you're trying to solve today. So if you've never done market research before, I recommend you to start with this book before you do anything else, because it will give you a lot of pointers on how to move next. The second mistake that we see is too much too soon. So if you are startup founders and if you are looking to build a product, you probably have heard a term floating around called MVP, minimum viable product. Some people will talk about MSP, minimum sellable product. The quirky one will talk about MLP, minimum lovable product. They all mean the same thing, which is we want to build something small. And the reason why you want to build something small is because when you start to give something to people, when you start to bring your product into the hand of people, you don't know how they're going to react. You can hope they're going to react positively, but something is going to be missing for a certain segment. Something is not going to be understood correctly. So what you're trying to do is to make that product as small as possible, give it into the hand of your market and see how they react, and then start to tweak what is needed in order to sell more and scale. Don't get distracted with what the others are doing. I'm terrible with that. I mean, it's very difficult for me to follow this advice in my own day-to-day as building a business. But still, don't get too distracted with what the others are doing. As you start building your product, you're going to see other people doing new shiny things, and it's going to be very easy to think, oh, product B over there is doing this. We should be integrating that into our own product. Forget about that. You should have a plan, follow the plan, get to market as quickly as possible, and learn from there. Just nail the smaller experience 10 times better than the others. Like this is your aim for the MVP. Just nail the first time experience, sell the product, solve one problem, and then grow from there. Another mistake that we see often is to choose on price only. There will always be someone cheaper than the person you're trying to buy from. Like anywhere, somewhere, there is someone that's going to be cheaper than us. There is someone that's going to be cheaper than the next guy next door. There's always going to be someone cheaper. Now, price is only one part of the equation. You have to think about what is this other party bringing. This other party that you're going to work with, are they bringing strategy? Are they bringing access to network? Are they bringing you peace of mind? You don't understand tech and you want somebody to build something for you and completely forget about these parts and concentrate on the business. Are they building resilience? Are they building infrastructure? You need to understand what these other parties bringing you that is more than just the cash value on the quote spreadsheet. And more importantly, you have to understand the chemistry. What people don't realize is that when you're building a product, you're not in bed with that company for the next 3 months. You're in bed with that company for the next 3 years. So having a smell on the chemistry and maybe paying something a little bit more just to go with the right people, the ones that do feel right, the ones that connect with your product, the ones that have a certain passion behind your product, the ones that really will help you drive your product further, that would be worth a lot of money, basically. So chemistry, people first. Don't forget that you're making a whole team. What these other parties bringing you, and then again, there's always going to be someone cheaper. So don't decide just on price all the time. This one is coming up as we work with bigger projects. People have now more and more different silos, different teams, or different pods. And what we've seen is that dissociating the strategy, the user experience, the design, and the development, and having them happening in their own silos, in their own little blocks, one after the other, is a recipe for disaster. These disciplines are each independent in their own right. I'm not saying that a developer can be a really good UX. This is not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that in order to be efficient at building your product, you need each of those disciplines to feed from each other. Like a UX person needs to understand what is possible to do within the MVP budget in order to be efficient. The design needs to understand what is possible and is it in line with the strategy and the user experience before they can actually do the designs. And the development needs to prepare their plan of development and prepare the architecture that is going to follow what UX and design have been bringing to the table. So having them happening as independent silos with multiple cooks happening is going to bring more problem to the party. Now, it doesn't mean that this is going to be design by committee or UX by committee. Like, you still have a leader in their own section. That can be independent companies doing UX, design, and development. They just need to talk through the process. They just need to talk to each other. Do not hide each other. Or do not start the UX without having chosen the development firm, because that's going to cause friction towards the start of the development, and this is going to cost you more money. So try to think as like one team or multiple teams, but working together. And we go back to that chemistry idea again. Mistake number 5 is about talking about features only. Features are cool. I love them. I build them, and I love building features. This is what I do day in, day out. People want to add more. They like popping candy. But the reality is a feature costs money. A feature, like building a feature, will take some development time, will take some design time, UX time. So having an idea and wanting to build it, if you're asking someone else to build it, is going to cost you money. So what we want to hear is not ideas about features, but more about problems that people are experiencing. Start with the problem at hand. What is the problem right now that you're trying to solve for a particular sections of your user? And then work from there at actually nailing what are the minimum features that are needed for your next sprint or for your next phase of the product. So features, if you start with the features, it's too easy to get excited about the idea of having something new on the site. But the problem is, more often than not, these new things will not actually solve the problem of your users. So always start with the problem at hand and then expand from the problem, and that will drive your feature, not the other way around. Don't try to shoehorn a problem into a feature that you think looks cool. Mistake number 6 is about avoiding the difficult questions. Again, this talk is about working with an external party, working with an agency like Cookies or something else. You can imagine that there is a cost that building the product, but there are other costs that whoever you're working with should be talking about. And if they're not talking about those, you should ask the questions. How much is it going to cost to support the app once the app is live? What happens if, what is it going to cost if a bug happens? How much is it going to cost to host the application? Where is the application going to be hosted? What happens if something goes wrong on the weekend? What about SEO? What about these different external services that you're recommending that we use? How much are they going to cost? All these kind of things needs to be asked before you choose whoever you're going to work with, because they can add up pretty quickly, but they will be there regardless. Like your app or your website will need to be hosted somewhere. There are bound to be bugs. As good as your developer can be, there are bound to be bugs, there are bound to be problems, there are bound to be upgrades, there are bound to be changes. So you need to understand as part of your business plan how much cash you need to provision for the next 12 months for this particular part of the business, which is the supporting and the scaling part of your app. And the next one is where I try to be too clever with this title. So starts before the end, and the end is only the start. So basically what I'm trying to say here is that you are in charge of your product success. A company that is helping you to build your product can only bring the expertise in their own experts side. So development, design, UX, whatever that is, but these companies bringing the expertise to the table, but scaling and selling this product is going to be your problem at hand. We're here to help as a guide, but you still have to do the hard work. So start building your audience sooner than later. Start building your connections sooner than later. Be comfortable with not knowing where to go next. Be comfortable with not knowing what's going on and just trying to find what is the next step in your journey, because you're going to experience that quite a lot. And when the product is live, when finally the team press the button and now you can say to people, hey, you can go to mysuperproduct.com, this is when the real work starts. This, like everything that happened before was just to bring you to product to market. Now you have to market and sell this product to the hands of people. So pace yourself. It's a marathon. Don't try to go too fast, but don't forget that you should actually start at selling your product before your product exists. So if we have to go through a very quick recap for the 7 mistakes, it would go with: do your research, start small and then improve. Price. I got a bit ahead. There we go. Price is only one choice factor. Aim for an integrated team. Features are only a means to an end. Don't avoid the difficult questions, and the end is only the start. Because it's our talk, I have to do it. Obviously, if you're looking for a technical partner, feel free to contact us at cookieshq.co.uk. More than happy to just chat and see if we can't help. We'll direct you to other people that can help, basically. But more than happy to hear about any kind of ideas. But now let's go to the fun part, I hope, of this talk, which is the questions. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope we have a couple of questions.
We do have a couple of questions. So I will start with one from Jodie, just because that was submitted before the session. Let me just find it. So we've got: what key lessons did you learn from putting estimated costs and other deliverables to your early projects through to the way you cost projects for your clients today? What did you do then that perhaps you would do now differently? What advice would you give to your younger self on this subject?
So one of the things that we do today, and that we didn't do at the beginning, is that we don't give a price without having some piece of work being done. And by that, I mean, we give, when somebody tells us, hey, this is the product we want to do, and this is the problem our customers have at hand, and this is how we think the product is going to work, we can give a rough estimate. More often than not, this rough estimate turned out to be true, as into this is what the product is going to cost. But in order to have a quote, we enter what we call a discovery session, and this discovery session will then nail the actual final price of the product. So we do a little bit of work in order to really understand where the product is going, what is truly needed. Can we actually remove certain things that we believe are not needed for the MVP and put them into like a second phase, and then bring to that. The second things that we've introduced in Cookies a couple of years back is what we call the pragmatic launch. And basically how it works is when you work with startup, you have three impeding things. One, how much is it going to cost? Two, when can I actually start my marketing and be live? And three, what is the product that I'm going to have at the end? So we decided to work towards a fixed model where we say, okay, after the discovery session, we will give you a fixed cost for the build of the product. We will give you a relatively fixed timeline, which is between 12 to 16 weeks. So now let's discuss about what actually goes into the third part, which is what is the product going to be, knowing that we have two immovable deadlines and cost. And it has made the discussion much easier, basically, for us, because people know roughly how much the quote is going to be, with a floating 10-15% somewhere, but they know roughly how much it's going to be. They know roughly how long it's going to take to build. We just need to nail down what exactly are going to be the features in there.
We've had one from Vanessa, said she's quoted you saying you're in bed with the company for the next 3 years. Does that mean that it's very hard to switch dev teams once the project is underway? What are the issues of moving your app/product to a new dev team, for example, after MVP or between versions?
That's a really good question. And I think for me, it's going to depend on a couple of things. It's going to depend on the initial technology, for example. I can only speak about technology because that's what I know and that's what I do. And I'm sure that there are going to be multiple other things that a strategist or a UX is going to say. But from a technology standpoint, that will depend on what was the technology chosen for the build of your product. So for example, in Cookies, we use something that is called Ruby on Rails. Ruby on Rails is extremely conventional. So a Ruby on Rails developer can jump onto another Ruby on Rails project and it's going to feel like a home. It knows where things are, and very quickly you can embed new developers onto your project. So it makes that kind of transition a bit easier. But it's also part of the question you should ask with your partner early on. So for example, right now we're going through a transition with a client called Good 60. We've worked together for, I think, about 5 years. And now they're going through series of investments and raise and all that, and we're helping them to recruit their internal team. The first developer that came in, we had like a large handover, and then we explained to them everything about the application, how it was working, and we helped them basically getting to speed. And now this developer is completely independent, but we're helping them with the recruitment of their own team now, because the product is going into a direction that will not involve cookies anymore. It would not make sense for us to still be in the middle. So you have to ask those questions to your partner. That's the first thing. Two, it's also a technology choice whereby you hope that the developers are going to build something that is documented, tested, and is going to be easy to transfer. This is not going to be an automatic switch. If you're switching from one developer to another, you should allow some sort of transition period where your two teams or your two developers are working together, and there is a handover period in the middle. And ideally, yes, you want the two teams to be working together so they can support each other for a certain amount of time until now your product is going to your new team. So we've done that with success numerous times. It's completely possible. We also did the inverse, whereby some product were built by other teams and the relationship with the other teams were falling down, and then they were coming back to us. So it's completely possible, but it just has to be planned, and it's not something that can happen overnight.
Cool. We've had one from Piers that says, any advice for people who get emotionally attached to an idea and won't accept that it's not a great business/product? You are one of those people.
I am one of those person, and we've wasted so much money in the company just because everything that I keep saying to my clients, I'm extremely good at not listening to these advice. And it's very difficult for me. And we had the case a couple of years back when we thought we had a really great idea. And I was in charge of this idea and I was in charge of building this product. And it turns out, when we look back in retrospect, every single mistake that I've talked about today, I've probably did all of them. And this is why now we're extremely cautious about those mistakes. I think that was actually an eye-opener. But trying to not get attached is extremely hard when it's your idea. This is why most often than not, we would recommend to just talk to who you think are going to be your customers. So talk to other people, but don't talk about your idea. And this is actually the most difficult part. Not saying, hey, can I pick your brain for 15 minutes? I have this idea. This is what the product is going to do, and it's going to be amazing. What do you think? Most often than not, people are going to say, because they want to be nice, oh yeah, that sounds a good idea. So don't talk about your product. Don't talk about your idea. Just ask them questions around their problem. Hey, how do you find work today? If your idea is to bring a new marketplace for freelancers, for example, talk to freelancers and I say, where do you find your work as a freelance? Oh well, they come from referrals, for example. Okay, so when you get those referrals, what happens? Like, do you track them? Do they go into a CRM? Like, basically try to understand what is going on their life and where your product would fit before you start to introduce your idea. That would be actually my advice, to not get too attached to the idea.
I have a feeling I'll be playing this back to you one day, Nic.
I know.
So we've only got a few minutes left. We've got another a question from John saying, if I have a budget with the idea that the MVP is only the end of the start, how much budget should I keep for the next stage?
We try to keep it very simple now. Again, if you would have talked to me 10 years ago and you would have bring me a budget, I would have probably only think about, okay, what you need for the MVP parts. Now, what we try to say is that whatever you're putting into the MVP, you need to have at least another 50 to 100% for the next 12 months. So if your MVP, let's keep that very easy. If your MVP is going to cost you 50 grand to build, for example, your total budget needs to be at least about 100 grand, I would say. If you're a commercial startup, like if you are another type of product, it can be completely different. But if you're a SaaS business, if you're a commercial startup, I would say start with half of your budget for technical goes into the MVP. The rest goes for the support and the scale throughout the next 12 months.
Okay, thank you. Another one from Piers saying, what are the best skills for someone with a product idea to work on themselves? For example, briefing skills or people management skills.
Can you say that again? Sorry.
What are the best skills for someone with a product idea to work on themselves? For example, briefing or people management.
I'm not entirely sure. I don't think I'm qualified to answer that one. I would love to, but the reality is I'm extremely techy, and for me, I can. If I take my own experience, it would be very easy for me to build any kind of product. The reality is I've been building product for 10 years for other people, and I have no idea how to make my own product successful. But I can make other people's product very successful. So it's very difficult to answer on that one for me, because I'm one-sided, and I need the rest of the team to actually make other people have success. So I'm not sure how to answer that one, Piers. I'm sorry.
Maybe recruitment.
Maybe.
Okay, and then the final question: what are the pros and cons of outsourcing to other countries, for example, Asia?
Asia is okay. There are some extremely good, and I'm talking in the Ruby on Rails world because that's the world I know, but I'm sure it's exactly the same if you're using another technology, like whether that's PHP or .NET or whatever. There are some extremely good offshore companies or nearshore or offshore companies. Like, they do exist. They are extremely good, and they will be cost efficient. That's entirely true. So you can get, for the price that we would pay for us, for example, for one developer, you can probably get 2 in a nearshore and probably 3 in an offshore. So that's for me a pro, like that does exist. The biggest cons for me is that you will struggle to get that chemistry done. You will struggle to get that kind of sense of a team, in a sense of we are going through that journey together, because they're only there to build what you're giving them as a specification most of the time. The biggest cons is that if something goes wrong, and we've actually rescued quite a few of those products that were going on near or offshore from the wrong companies, when things goes wrong, they go wrong very, very badly. And it's very difficult for you, if you're not a technical founder, if you're not somebody that is technical, you will have a smell that something is wrong, but it's very difficult to know the actual scale of how wrong things are in your product. So there is an inherent danger. For me, the biggest danger is the chemistry, is the fact that you're not going to be able to phone them on a Saturday with like, hey, I've got this idea, where do I go now? You don't have that kind of sense of community and a sense of team with a nearshore and offshore team that you will have with somebody that's a bit more local or national. That's my answer to that.
Okay, I think that's it for the questions, and we're a couple of minutes over.
Cool. Sorry. So in that case, allow me very, very quickly to say that we are going to bring the smart cookies now every 2 weeks versus the one that we're doing in person that was every quarter. So it's a change of pace. We have been extremely lucky to have like a really good response from future panelists. So for example, in 2 weeks, we're going to have Sonia Nissen, who's going to talk to us about how to get your message across in a way that connects. And she is a wizard of words. She's like an extremely good speaker. We had her before at in-person events, and she's really engaging, so you don't want to miss that one. We got the lovely, crazy Joan Payne, who's going to talk to us about the art of SEO. We are lucky to have Joe Leach, who's going to talk to us about making better decisions using psychology. Ian Blair about talking about recruitment in tech, and so many more that we have now lined up for the next 6 months. So keep posted. I think you will hear about us on the LinkedIn, so you can follow me or Emily on LinkedIn or Cookies HQ on LinkedIn. We also have a meetup group where you can find the smart cookies. And basically, if you follow one of those channels, Twitter, LinkedIn, or that meetup group, you will hear about the next event. Thank you very much. I can say it was extremely strange to talk to myself and Emily only through this video and not see the other people's face. And I really hope you've enjoyed that very first one. And we are back in 2 weeks with Sonia. Thank you very much. Thank you, Emily, for hosting it. All righty. Have a good day, everyone. And I hope you can have another coffee soon. Bye.